Welcome everybody to the Not Your Average Investor Show, Thursday edition, JWB's Rental Income Property of the Week. This week we are reviewing a property on 6739 Champlain Road, 32208 with an 8.92% ROI and less than $36K out of pocket required. It's a good deal. I think your feeling is right on point, and it is that we are live on Facebook for the Thursday edition of the Not Your Average Investor Show. Today is the JWB Rental Income Property of the Week. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez, and with me as always, the man that goes by the initials GC, because they're the initials of Genius Concepts, generating cash flow, of a great co-host, and also the initials of a man born named Gregg Cohen. Welcome, Gregg.
Thank you so much, my friend. Great to be with you all. Thank you all for joining us and making this the most special hour of the entire week right here.
This is the special hour of the week, man. I love Thursdays at this time exactly, and I love seeing everybody back in the house. Nadeem, Eddie, Lee, Greg, Leo, John, everybody already chatting up. All of the veterans understand that this chat has a special function. When you are chatting with us, you want to hit that blue button and hit panelists and attendees so everybody else can see it and you can make a brand new friend. If not, only Greg and I see it. And Greg's cool, I'm cool, but there's really cool people in the chat as well. So we want you interacting in there. And then second is the idea that this is driven by you. Stevie B in the house. Welcome, Stevie. This is driven by you. The Q&A box is the perfect place to pop it open, ask a question. I'm going to get to the questions that you ask as quickly as possible. We've been getting a lot of people on the Thursday calls and we love it. And we want to answer every question, but sometimes we don't get to every question. And the Q&A box ensures that our sales team will reach out to you afterwards, right? So there is two reasons to do it: for your own good, and then there is for my good. I have limited mental capacity, and the chat rolls up real quickly while the Q&A stays present in front of me. And we got a surprise today. Well, not a surprise. Maybe it's a surprise. I feel like we mentioned this, but we've been working on this interface for you to see the properties of the week, the POT dubs, as we like to call it. It's at jwbinventory.com. If you want to see past property of the week breakdowns, right now, within 24 hours, you're going to get this breakdown. This property of the week will be there. We're working on getting it live before the show and for future episodes. But if you go to jwbinventory.com, you're going to really enjoy yourself. I'm just throwing it out there, right? You're going to get to see all the different sheets. So today, before we get into the property, we got a couple of cool little announcements, Greg.
We do, brother.
We do. Number one is an announcement about your Fanny. What's going on there?
Oh yeah, let's go there. And just to add on one more thing about going to JWB Inventory, it's something you're going to want to bookmark. You know, a lot of times you have to kind of give information to get things from websites and whatnot. JWB Inventory takes you straight there. And you can always see that. You can always see the properties of the week that are there. You don't have to give any information or whatnot. You're already on the show, so you're already here. So it's going to be a great thing for you guys to constantly reference and bookmark and hopefully be able to learn even more. All of the evaluations are there for you to download. And I even get on there and do a quick, maybe 5 or 10 video recap of every property. So you guys are going to love it. And with that, let's talk about our friend Fanny. So 2 weeks ago, we had a lot of interest in the group, a lot of questions from clients asking about news that Fannie came out and said that they were limiting their purchases of investment loans and second home loans to 7% of their portfolio. And everybody said, well, first, what does that mean long-term for interest rates? What does that mean long-term for this asset class? And then subsequent questions were like, what does 7% really mean? Right? If they were at 15% before, that would mean something different than if they were purchasing 3%, right? As far as what that limitation to 7% really is. So I wanted to get back to you guys. I've done a lot of digging. This information is not very readily available, but I've got some information here. It's the best that I can make of sort of kind of loosely correlated information. And this is kind of just the way I see it. You know, the way we last left the conversation was that I shared with you that I wasn't surprised that things like this were happening because interest rates have been historically low. And that's one of the reasons why this is, I believe, the very best time to be investing in rental properties. And we also have been saying for almost a year now that they will not get lower. Interest rates will not get lower. Interest rates will be going up. And so actions like this with Fannie limiting their purchase of investment loans ultimately is an action that would lead to higher interest rates. I still believe that in the long run, but I don't think it's something as drastic as everybody originally thought as far as rates jumping up dramatically like tomorrow. And here's why. So we actually, we pay a consulting firm every single month to get information called John Burns Consulting. It's really high level information for our space. And we asked them to do some research to find out what percentage of loans Fannie and Freddie have currently been buying. I don't have 100% apples to apples information on that, but they got us the loan purchases for the last few quarters for Freddie Mac, which I would assume is pretty similar to Fannie. And they've been between 3 to 5% of their portfolio has been investment property loans. So if they've been between 3 to 5%, and now Fannie says they're limiting it to 7, to me, that doesn't mean like the sky is falling and it's going to change dramatically overnight, because prior to this, they were purchasing 3 to 5% of their portfolio as investment loans. So that was a good data point. The other thing is I really wanted to understand what 7% meant in the grand scheme of it and how that was being calculated. And it actually turns out that the way it's being calculated is Fannie is looking back at individual lenders over the last year. And that individual lender Fannie will not buy more than 7% of that individual lender's volume, which is different than 7% of the entire portfolio. Pablo, how did that land on you? Should I go in depth a little bit more there?
Yeah. I was thinking, what's my follow-up question here as I'm like trying to digest it. Yeah. All right. So Fannie isn't buying a lender's portfolio. So they're going bank to bank and they're just like, nah, man, you only have enough deals. You only have this many deals with me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. So the output of this is that there are a billion lenders out there, and some do a tremendously high volume of investment loans. Some do a very small volume of investment loans, and they sell those loans to Fannie. Now, if a lender out there who's originating loans originates and sells more than 7% of their volume, this would affect them, right? But there's also a billion other lenders out there who you would think could swoop in and be able to do investment loans and still be able to sell those loans to Fannie up to that 7% ratio. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when I think about this, it's going to affect lenders differently. It's going to be very specific for that lender. And one would assume that there's other options. If the lender who was doing more than 7% can't sell that to Fannie, well, that lender would probably change their practices a little bit or whatnot. But there's also other lenders who have not gotten near 7% that it would not affect their ability to then sell those loans to Fannie. All of this means that there are more options out there to obtain the best financing. And so because of all this, and again, I'm doing the best I can with limited information here, but here's the way I see it and the way we see it internally is that we don't expect this to have a huge, sharp rise of interest rates immediately, like I thought it may before 2 weeks ago when the news first came out. I think you're going to see some shifts in making sure that the criteria to get these loans is a little bit harder. One shift we've seen is for top tier credit, the credit score requirement has jumped from 720 to 740, which makes sense to me. So I think you'll probably see some minor changes that way. And so that's better news in the short run for all of us because interest rates are low right now. I don't see them jumping immediately overnight, but just keep in mind, it's happening. Interest rates are going up. This time is very scarce as far as how long it's going to be with low interest rates. And you should take that into account when planning for the assets you're going to purchase.
Yeah, totally, man. I'm very much looking forward to getting on the phone with my lender right now for that lucky property that I'm scooping up, right? Like I'm like wondering, yeah, I will provide a real life data point the moment that they give me that rate, right? So like I got my last one at 3.6. Let's see, we'll get this one on. Maybe it's already happening. We got a couple questions already, Greg. One of them is from our old friend, Anonymous Attendee. And
French, right? French?
Oui. Anonymous asks, so do the lenders that specialize in investments have less investments available?
Do the lenders that specialize in investments have less investments available? I'm not really sure where that question's going, but I'll take a stab at trying to answer it. And Mr. Anonymous or Mrs. Anonymous, feel free to chime in if I'm not nailing this one. So lenders, it's not about what investments they have available, right? It's the loans that they tend to take on based on whoever is borrowing from them, right? So they have built their marketing and their systems and their clientele to focus on certain types of clients, right? Some lenders love to work with homeowners, first-time homeowners, right? First-time buyers, right? Some lenders like to work only with investment properties, some, multifamily properties or whatever it may be. So those lenders who only work with investment properties or only do second loans, this is probably affecting them, right? Because I would imagine some of them are over 7% of what they have done in the last year that they'd like to sell to Fannie. And so that will probably affect them. But you have a million other options out there as far as other lenders that can still sell to Fannie, is my understanding at this point based on kind of how I'm seeing it. So hopefully that gave a little bit of clarity.
Yeah. So Anonymous clarified saying less investment capital available. Like if I think about what's happening, it's kind of what you said. If there is a lending institution that is overly focused on lenders, right? Like if it makes up most of their business and they do a lot of it, that might be limiting the amount of lenders that they're able to extend this to. But on the other side, if
You
you're
mean investors, right? Let me just make sure I'm
yes, yeah,
limited
investors.
number of investors they'd be able to extend it to.
Correct. I don't even
Yeah.
know what I said. I blacked out.
You said lenders, but it's good.
Thank you. So, but on the other side of the equation, this is now going to create an opportunity for banks that would love to get the investor business that aren't known as the niche investor bank. And if they have a portfolio to fill based on the idea, like they're going to be able to compete with the ones that specialize for investors in a specific way, right?
Yeah, you would think so. You would think that people would start to move that way. Although, to be quite honest, like I don't think any specific capitals. Here's a couple things. We think that overall, Freddie has been buying between 3 to 5% of their purchases have been investment loans over the last few quarters. Like each quarter has been 3 to 5%. So my general feel is that would be similar to what Fannie has been buying. So my general feel is that they're probably not getting to 7% for the majority of lenders out there that are selling to Fannie and Freddie, right? So like, I would think the vast majority of lenders, originators probably are not at 7%, right? And that's 7% of their volume over the last 52 weeks is what they're basing it against. So I don't think there's major movement there. And I also don't think that, I don't see a whole lot of lenders changing their business model to capitalize on this, because this lending arena is going to be changing wildly over the next year, right? So it's like, do you reorganize everything you have to do to capitalize on this one-time opportunity when probably it's not negatively affecting the vast majority of your competition right now? So all roads lead to kind of more of this kind of steady increase in interest rates is what I see over the coming quarters, not like a one-time spike just because of this news. It's how I'm feeling. And then we've represented this in our property evaluations because every week we get updates as to what our interest rates are from our lenders in our approved network. And we don't see rates going up over 4%. 4% is what's on our property evaluations. That's what it's been even since Pablo put his properties under contract. And we're not jumping that up at this moment. If we had a lead time, which we would, that was going to happen, you'd see that on your property evaluation expectations. We'd be talking about it here too.
Yeah, you brought out something that opened up my eyes this morning while we were wrapping up our super fast run. And it's something that Margaret Smith is alluding to here in the question. She's saying, wondering whether it might not be helpful for JWB to go to their favorite lenders to get these questions answered specific to those lenders. And what Gregg shared with me today is that they have a weekly call with their favorite lenders where their lenders are open up kind of like exactly what they're working on and like full transparency, and you make informed decisions that way. So we were talking about this idea of having a call that is lending best practices and kind of open up the curtain to show you how that process works. So 2 votes, mine and Margaret Smith's, for the record.
Yeah, there you go. And to her point, about talking to those lenders, absolutely, we do. That's actually where this news came from. Even before we brought it to you on the show, one of our lenders tipped us off that this was coming down the pike actually about a week before it hit the news as well. So those relationships are invaluable. And that's one of the reasons why we love those lender relationships.
And real quick, Margaret's got a couple more questions and then we're going to hit the property. Margaret Smith asks, presumably JWB lenders are among those out there that specialize in investor loans. And then she clarifies saying, then again, they may not need Fannie or Freddie. So maybe you can comment on that and then we will whisk ourselves off.
Yes, our lenders do specialize in investment property loans. Yes, they do sell, the vast majority of them sell the loans to Fannie and Freddie. You want that because that ensures that you get the lowest rates and the best terms for your capital. Again, we've talked with them all the way since this news. We talk with them all the time anyways, since this news, and we've seen what rates they can perform at today, and they haven't risen. So we feel really good about it.
All right, man. Well, speaking of feeling really good, we're about to pop some champagne today because we are going to, where are we at? 6739 Champlain Drive in Jacksonville, Florida, 32208. This is the POTW, purchase price of $158,000, 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom with a carport, estimated rent range from $1090 to $1140. More on the estimated rent range in a second, with a 2 or 3 year lease of $1,115. And the star of the show, what everybody comes to JWB to acquire, is not this picture of this house over here with this tree. It is this, the $180 estimated conventional financing total monthly cash flow, and this 8.92% estimated conventional financing total return on investment. Gregg, the huge, talk to me about this $180 total monthly cash flow. What does that number represent? What does it not represent?
Yes, there are 2 things that I want you to pay attention to when you have the opportunity to invest in a rental property. I want you to look at what your total monthly cash flow is on a normal month. And what you're looking for here is, does this property pay for itself? Can I take on this expense load? Can I take on this debt? And can that be covered by the rental income coming in? And one of the reasons that investors love Jacksonville is it is a market with low prices and high rents. And when you have low prices and high rents at the core of it, those are the market dynamics that allow us to bring an asset to you like this one, which not only covers the expense load on a normal month, but it pays for itself, more than pays for itself, to the tune of about $180. And what this should really represent for you as a rental property investor is, the vast majority of you who own rental properties, who are interested in this asset class, have a monthly passive income goal that is probably quite substantial. It's probably $3,000 a month or $5,000 a month or $10,000 a month that you'd like to generate in this asset class. In order to do that, you need to have multiple properties. And it is such a luxury to have multiple properties paying for themselves. It allows this business model to become scalable. And the alternative would be, if you're investing in rental properties and they don't pay for themselves, it's hard to make it scalable because you might have to go $200, $300 in the hole every single month, right? If you go and try and buy a property in California or New York, right, the numbers look very different than what they did here. And they would look negative on a total monthly cash flow basis each and every single month because the purchase prices are too high and the rents are not high enough. So you want to be in an asset class that is scalable. That's what is mainly represented. That's what I look at here. I don't get overly excited if it's $180 or $125 or what have you. I look at that and I say, if it's paying for itself and I'm with the right team in the right market, now this is scalable. This is something that I could take it to 3 properties, 5 properties, 10 properties. And that's sort of the baseline that we're looking for, is paying for itself and cash flow positive. That's kind of the high level theory of it. Specifically, the way that we calculate that number is we take the rental income, we subtract out the principal, the interest payments, the property taxes, the property insurance costs, and the monthly property management fees. And what you're left with is estimated $180 on this property. Those are the fees that happen every single month. You're always going to have rental income coming in, minus taxes, minus insurance, minus principal, and minus interest payments, minus property management fees. And that's how we get to those numbers.
There you go. So this will be your typical experience, right? Like that cash flow per month is your typical experience. Every once in a while, There are months that you may have a placement fee, some kind of maintenance, right? Like all that is the maintenance rate and stuff is accounted for down here, but it's also accounted for here, right? In the conventional financing total return on investment. Greg, you want to explain the difference between this total ROI versus this monthly cash flow?
Yes, total monthly cash flow that we were just talking about is myopic by definition. It is only looking at cash flow, but there's actually 5 profit centers in rental property investing. And for you to make the best decision with your assets, with your funds, with your resources, you need to be looking beyond just cash flow. You need to be looking at all of the profit centers. And so when we look at total return on investment, it takes into account additional profit centers, and it also takes into account additional expenses that will happen at some point over the year. Some of those Pablo was just talking about, right? One of those expenses that will happen at some point will be a tenant placement fee, right? It will happen the first year because your home is going to be rented, which is a good thing. And then hopefully it doesn't happen for a very long time because we want to keep your resident there. But one thing that we do is we include the full brunt of that tenant placement fee, and that's included in that 8.92% return. That's very important to count the full effect of it. I see very few turnkey providers out there that actually account for a tenant placement fee. So that's one of the expenses. You're also accounting for your maintenance costs and your vacancy cost. And again, a lot of other people really they have a poor experience because they don't estimate high enough, either when buying a property from another company or doing it themselves. They just go way low on expected maintenance and vacancy costs. But we don't. Ours are all verified by over 2,000 data points that we track each and every single month. And those would be all of our clients' returns that we've tracked ever since 2011 on a monthly basis. So those percentages are based on real data, and we use those to then estimate what your expected maintenance and vacancy costs will be. Long story short, that's more costs that we put into our evaluations to make sure that we can hit your numbers. We also include closing costs. It's another cost a lot of times it's forgotten. So all these additional costs that happen at some point are included. We also are including estimated tax savings, income tax savings, where you get some incredible tax advantages for rental properties. We're also including principal pay down. These are 2 additional profit centers for you. And so we include those. You include the additional good things, those profit centers. I just talked about 2 of them. You also include the additional expense load that will happen at some point, and you factor all that in, you take it over to your initial investment, and that's how you get to 8.92% estimated return on investment.
Got it. As you explained that, the way I synthesize that is you add the costs that are not that aren't just average monthly stuff. You add the lifetime cost stuff that happens irregularly. And you also include the other profit centers, of which are the
tax savings,
the tax savings and the loan pay down that is happening by your tenant as you are just kind of having this property for free to a certain extent because it's paying for itself based on the cash flow, right? Like you talk about 5 profit centers, you didn't include appreciation rate when you talk about that, right? So why do we have appreciation here at 0%, Greg?
Well, at the end of the day, all right, this is an asset when you can earn a consistently performing, call it 8.92% return on investment. Part of us is just like, listen, this stands on its own 2 feet. That is a really great risk-adjusted return to earn. The other part of this is when folks they're factoring in home price appreciation, they tend to screw it up. They either tend to put a really high number there and don't fully understand when you should be putting a number there, a high number there, or they just totally don't pay any attention to it at all. The way to actually evaluate home price appreciation is somewhere in between. From 2001 to 2006, we know that the real estate market went way up. And so I started to buy my rental properties in 2006. I bought about 40 of them. And when I was buying them, like you would be stoned to death if you were told you were you would be stoned to death if you were out there saying that real estate didn't appreciate, right? It just wouldn't happen. Nobody thought about it, right? Real estate always went up in value. Then we saw the market actually drop from 2008 to 2011. And then everybody who was out there saying real estate always went up in value was totally found to be incorrect, right? And what everybody did after that point is they said, well, I'm never going to actually count on home price appreciation again. And so that's kind of where we've lived, many of us who have been investing since 2006, 7, 8, all the way through the Great Recession, have kind of lived there. The right way to evaluate home price appreciation is you have to realize that real estate is cyclical. And if you invest for the long haul, if you invest for a full market cycle, chances are that your upcoming home price appreciation over the next 10 to 20 year cycle on average will largely match what it was historically over the last 30 years. And we see that here in Jacksonville. And so with that in mind, if you are investing for a full market cycle, you can be counting on home price appreciation. And the rate in Jacksonville is actually 4.3% per year going back to 1991 on average. It's been 4.3%. So the reason I don't put it in there is because this investment stands on its own 2 feet. Without it, I like to underpromise and overdeliver. And then also, I don't know if you're going to invest for a full market cycle. If you're going to listen to me and you're going to invest for a full market cycle, you can and should be putting 4.3% in there because that's what I believe you'll see over the next market cycle for annualized average home price appreciation.
All right. So let's say I'm listening to you, Greg. I'm in it for a full market cycle. I can count on 4.3% because I am taking the mix of understanding that it doesn't always go up. It rarely goes down, but over a long term, it's going to happen. I press enter because it's going to happen because I'm holding it over 20 years and boom, we shoot up from like 8.9 to 24.55 on the conventional financing total ROI. Can you explain that one for us?
That's the beauty of leverage. That's why I'm such a proponent of using smart debt. What happens is when you use smart debt, you calculate your return on investment not by your purchase price. You calculate it based on how much money you put into the investment. And so when you run the numbers, if you have a property that you own, and let's say that that market value is $100,000 and you buy it, and that market value goes up 4%, that market value is now $104,000 and you earned $4,000 of gain there. If you bought it in cash, meaning you put everything down, you put 100% down, then your return on investment from appreciation would be 4,000 divided by 100,000, which is a 4% return on investment. However, if you use smart debt and you put 25% down, not 100% down, 25% down, and you still own that same property, the same market dynamics play out and it appreciates 4% in that next year. The market value still went up from 100 to 104,000. So you still earned $4,000 of gain from appreciation, but you only put $25,000 down. 4,000 divided by 25,000 is a 16% return just from the home price appreciation. And that's why this number jumped up from roughly 8 or 9% to almost 25%. It's because now you're capitalizing on that fourth profit center, which is home price appreciation. And that's why many people come to Jacksonville.
Got it. So I'm going to head back down. That's the power of leverage, right? That is the big trick, the big magical aha moment that I had as we started doing these properties of the week. And really what connected the dots for me when I was like sitting there arguing with my friends about why this is such a good investment. And I couldn't really portray it when they're like, man, but I can get 9%, 10% somewhere else. I'm like, And then once you explain that, I really started getting the idea that you can put a certain amount of your money in and get this return on the whole piece of the pie of the loan plus your money in makes the return even better. Like I can't go out and get a loan to go buy Tesla stock, right? But I can get a loan and buy some homes, right? Which I've done now almost twice.
Exactly.
Awesome, man. So we got a couple of questions here in the chat. We got Bob Ancosco. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. He asks a two-part question. What's the breakdown on properties JWB manages when it comes to cash versus non-recourse versus conventional financing? And then the second part is, what is the current best non-recourse rate and how do you see that changing in 2021?
Great questions, Bob. Nice to chat with you, a longtime client, Bob and Lorraine. So the breakdown between purchases, I'll give you some rough numbers. I mean, I say well over 60% of our purchases are conventionally financed. I mean, that number this year has probably gone up. It's probably 70% or more. I mean, the opportunities on the conventional financing side are so strong. And so the vast majority are going to be conventionally financed. Less smaller, probably, I'd say probably half and half, between non-recourse financing and cash. Non-recourse finance, for those who aren't aware, is a loan that you get basically when you're buying a property in your retirement accounts. And then cash would be the other, call it probably 15% non-recourse, 15% cash, and call it 70% as a rough number for this year for conventionally financed.
Okay. So 60% conventional finance, probably spiked because right now there's good deal when it comes to conventional financing. And that's really driving a lot of urgency and people buying a lot because it's a moment in time that exists. And then kind of half and half for the other two, right?
Yeah, I'm ballparking it, but that's where I would be.
It's a good ballpark. I'll take a swing at that ballpark. What about the current best non-recourse rates, and how do you see that changing in 2021? Is that affected by this Fannie Mae stuff?
No, it's not affected by this. Your non-recourse lenders are so small and niche. I mean, it's a very loose effect, right? The money that comes to fund your non-recourse loans is not Fannie money. It largely is private investment. Sometimes it can be some pension funds or some private equity capital, but it's usually just private money, private individuals. And so the rates are going to be higher than what you would be on the Fannie side, but it's not so affected by what Fannie is doing. It's just a very loosely correlated thing. So to put it in perspective, interest rates for non-recourse financing used to be 12%. When we started, and I have some loans myself that were at 12% to be able to get non-recourse debt. That was probably, 4 years ago. We have great partners on the non-recourse side. We've continued to work with them, and that rate came down to 10%, and then it came down to 8%. Right now it's about 7.75%. And that's been pretty steady, I'd say, for probably the last maybe 6 months. There are just such a small number of players in the game that if one exits the business or their money source exits the business, it can cause rates to go up pretty substantially. But, you're probably talking, maybe a year, 2 years now, it's been kind of around 8, maybe 8.5% or lower. So I feel pretty good about that being pretty stable. I don't see it going up tremendously. It'll probably go up some over the next course of the year, I would imagine, but I don't see much. I think it's gonna be pretty stable.
So when it was like 15%, were folks buying it with negative cash flow and paying for it out of the retirement account? Like, what was happening when it was 15%?
So it was 12% is what it was.
I was way off.
And so when it was 12%, we had to make sure that it was still positively cash flowing. And so if your interest rate is higher, you can affect the positive cash flow number by two things, right? Your down payment, right? If you put more money down, then you're borrowing less, and your interest and you can still be cash flow positive. And the term of the loan as well, right? If your loan needs to be paid over 10 years, then that's going to be hard to positively cash flow. If your loan needs to be paid back over 20 years, then you can still make the numbers work for it to be positively cash flow. So positively cash flow has always been our benchmark. We haven't gone lower than that. Even when it was 12%, it was still positively cash flowing back in the day. The other thing to keep in mind is that while it sounds terrible that it was at 12%, call it 10 years ago or 8 years ago, or whatever it was, what were purchase prices like 8 years ago?
Lower,
substantially lower. So your rent to price ratio at that point was better. You could incur higher interest costs and still make the property cash flow back in the day. So those folks who had 12% loans, they made out great because they've experienced a lot of appreciation over the years.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay. So, all right. Still speaks to the idea that if you can get it at 7%, it's a good time to get in. If it used to be at 12% and a good deal, right? Like, so
yeah, still a good deal.
Still a good deal. Speaking of conventional term loans, Margaret Smith has a question. Is the conventional term of the loan normally 30 years? Is there an advantage to a 15-year term? And is there anything to consider in that analysis?
Great questions. It typically is a 30-year term. That's what I tend to do. That's what I do. You can go 15 years. the advantage to going 15 years. I think many times you'll get a slightly lower interest rate, which is a great advantage. The downside to doing that is that you are tying up more of your capital. The way I think about this is like the opportunity for me to borrow money at 4% for the next 30 years in play is like this amazing opportunity. And so if I do it that way, then I keep the minimum amount that I pay on the loans in place, and I have excess capital that I could then use to make additional investments that could probably earn more than 4%. Right, that's the macro sense of it. That's why I keep it in play. So I am not in a rush to pay off my debt on my rental properties. I like to keep that in place for 30 years. And then the positive cash flow is higher when you do that rather than 15 years. 15 years, your interest rate will be lower, but your positive cash flow will be a lot lower as well. And, I like the 30-year option, again, because of the ability to maximize the deal of the debt is kind of what I'm thinking about. But you'll always have the ability and the option to pay more every single month. If you're somebody who likes to pay more and you want to get it paid off quicker, there's no reason you can't pay more every single month to match it to that payment of whatever a 15-year mortgage would be. And you get the benefits of both worlds. You have that flexibility. So there you go.
That makes sense. Is there anything to the idea of paying it faster to then have more cash flow later? Like, is that a consideration? Like kind of like the part of where you're at in life, right? Like for me, I value cash flow heavily right now because I have this like young business that I may need to put capital in, while maybe somebody right now has a really high paying job. They don't need all that extra cash flow. So maybe they want to pay it off so that maybe they leave that high paying job quicker because they have more cash flow later on. Is that something to think about?
Yeah, I think it's based on your goals, right? Like if a client came to me and they were like, hey, listen, it's really important for me to have these loans paid off in 15 years. And positive cash flow today and for the next 15 years is not a priority for me, right? I just work better having a payment that I can just set auto payments and just pay it every single month. And mentally, it makes me feel better to see this thing, a 15-year loan, and have it go down. All of those factors, hey, that makes sense, right? If that's what it is for you, I'm not going to say it's a bad decision. From a return on investment perspective, it would not be the best return on your investment with the amount of capital that you have. But I'm a big believer that it's not all based on return on investment when you're making a decision. So I think you could make an argument, and we have clients that do 15-year mortgages, and I'm happy for them. I think that's great. What I would offer for somebody who is thinking that is at least consider the fact that you could get to the same place, paying it off in 15 years with a 30-year mortgage and give yourself more flexibility and be able to use the capital to a higher return on investment. Maybe that'll work for you. Maybe it won't.
Makes a lot of sense, man. Makes a lot of sense. Megan Parsons has an easy question. Will this sheet be emailed out? Or does this I know that you get access to a replay of this. Do they get the sheet emailed out, or should she be going to jwbinventory.com?
We do not email out the sheet. The way to get it is to go to jwbinventory.com. If you go there right now, you will see last week's property of the week, as well as an archive of the most recent shows as well. And going forward, every single property of the week will be there. So again, bookmark that, keep it there. You can always go there. And there is a 5 to 10 minute video clip of me breaking down the property of the week, similar to what we talk about here, as well as the actual evaluation. So that's all there. This one will be there tomorrow by end of day.
Got it. Anonymous Attendee has a question. This house does not seem to be rehabbed. I thought your homes were already rehabbed. What's going on, Greg?
Great question, Anonymous. This one is currently under renovation. So this picture that you're seeing is basically so you can see what the bones of the house look like. This one is undergoing a major rehab. As we have talked about, we buy properties, and the current state of the market right now is that we make those properties available to you as soon as we own them. So then you can then purchase them. So then you can put it under contract. And of course, the renovations are done for you prior to closing. And so that's how this house is as well. When it's a new construction house, it's a similar fact. If you start to look at some of the properties of the week and you look at the pictures, most of them are not going to be pretty. And that kind of works well because I tell you, the picture is the least most important thing when you're investing in rental properties. You need to get really good at being objectively looking at the numbers there. So that's what's going on here. This one is currently in renovations and will be renovated by the time you close on it, but you do need to get comfortable putting it under contract in an under renovation stage.
There you go. And Lee has a clarification in the chat. You put about 45K in renovations per property, right?
Yeah, over $40,000 is our average renovation. Thank you, Lee.
Yeah. And just to clarify, it's not so much this cell that you want to look at, it's this cell that you want to look at. But that being said, given that this property is under renovation and then it's going to get leased out, you have an update on days on market for properties these days, Greg, that I think you told me about. Maybe this is a good time to bring that up.
Yeah, it's great, man. I was thinking about our call with Melissa Gillespie, who runs our property management company 2 weeks ago. And I loved her being on the show. Thank you to everybody who was on the show too, because you guys gave her such an outpouring of love and support. It's really awesome. And I was thinking about what she was sharing. Her and her team have come up with 3 ROI maximizing innovations that are really going to lower maintenance costs, lower vacancy costs, and just do nothing but great things for clients and for residents. And we're super excited about it. And I was running with Pablo this morning. I'm like, how many times do you get onto a show or a webinar, or you get a call from a company that you're looking to do business with and like, hey, I'm so excited to bring this to you. This is going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. And they tell you all about it. And then they're like, it only costs $19.97, or whatever, right? There's always, they're selling you on it, right? You got to make an initial decision, another investment. Is it worth that return on investment? Many times it is. I just love the fact that Melissa got on here and everything that we were doing and are doing now does not cost the client 1 cent. It is just what we're doing. And this is how we are wired, is to get on this show and just tell you about the things that we're doing in the background that are going to dramatically improve your cash flow and dramatically improve your return on investment. And I think that starts with high level talent like Melissa, and it starts with goals being aligned. So I was fired up when we were running this morning. We've got another one for you. This is not something you have to pay for, but another thing that is going to dramatically improve your cash flows over time. So we know that rents are going up in Jacksonville. We talked a little bit about it, and there's an opportunity for us to continue to drive max rents. Long term, what has been proven is that the way to win in rental properties is by keeping your resident in your home for a very long time. That doesn't change. But if we can do that by signing long-term leases, and we can continue to push the gas as far as rent rates in future years, that's where we live at JWB. So one of the things that we have done in the past is we've signed those long-term leases, those 2 and those 3-year leases. But the incentive in the past has been, resident, if you sign up for a 3-year lease, we're going to hold the second year rent rate constant. It's not going to increase from year 1 to year 2. And you'll get your rent increase in year 3. And it's been a $50 rent increase for year 3. If you had signed a 2-year lease, you got a $50 rent increase in year 2. So there was some incentive there. Well, our leasing team is ready to do a little bit better on your behalf. Actually do a lot better on your behalf. Take on a lot of additional work to do it. So what we have rolled out now is for residents who sign a 2-year lease. Before, there was a $50 increase. Now, there is either a $50, a $75, or a $100 increase. And that is determined by the rent bucket that they are in. Basically, the highest priced homes have a $100 rent increase in the second year. The lowest priced rent homes have a $50 increase. So there's a huge advantage there. $50 to potentially $100 a month going up in the second year of the lease. So that's huge. For a 3-year lease, it gets even better. For residents that sign a 3-year lease, now their rents are going to go up in year 2 instead of it happening in year 3. And the rents, of course, are going to go up either $50, $75, or $100. So all the net effect of this for a client who has a resident who signs a 3-year lease, that's somewhere between a $600 to an $1,800 net increase in rental income by us taking this on and doing this for you, which is really, really cool.
That's per year, right? 1,600 to 600 to 1,600 per year.
Exactly. Well, and then that's a great segue into lease renewals, because we've made that better too. So lease renewals now, for a 1-year lease renewal, it is set to the market rent. So for a lease renewal, somebody's been in your home a longer period of time, right? You don't want to set it, you don't know if $100 is the right amount or $50 is the right amount, because somebody might be in the home 3 to 4 years from now. So for a 1-year lease renewal, it's explained early on that the rent is going to be increased to whatever market rent is. In addition, for a 2-year lease renewal, the rent will go up by 3% in the second year. For a 3-year lease renewal, the rent will also go up by 3% in the third year. So this is going to have a really big impact in more rental income coming to you as a client for your initial lease, as well as your long-term here with renewals. It's a beautiful thing to be renting properties right now because of the market dynamics that we're in.
Awesome, man. Lee puts in the comments, wow, crazy good idea for the owners. Have the residents pushed back at all on this new policy, or they just kind of understand that this is what's happening?
We don't make these decisions lightly, right? We take into account what residents are what their options are, what the state of the market is, and does the product and service that we're offering to the resident justify it? Is this a better option for them than what they could do for any other home they want to rent down the road? We always take that into account. I mean, quite frankly, right now, homes are renting very quickly. I'll give you a stat here. We manage over 3,700 homes here at JWB. We have one home that is over 60 days on market. That one home is not even a client's home. It's my home. It's a home that my business partners and I own. And it's 62 days on market. Everything else is under 60 days out of 3,700 homes. Our average days on market across the ones that are available is 18 days right now. I mean, these are crazy low numbers for a management company that manages 3,700 homes. So when we see the opportunity for somebody else, put ourselves in the shoes of our residents, would they be better served spending money with somebody else in a different home, in a different service, or would they be better served doing it with JWB? We believe very strongly that the best value is with JWB. And we're seeing that as we see homes being rented. I mean, this was rolled out, I think, a few weeks ago now. We haven't slowed down our leases or our renewals at all since we've rolled it out. So we feel like it is the right thing to do, because this is the opportunity that the market is bearing. And our responsibility is to you as an owner is to maximize your risk-adjusted returns on investment.
There you go, man. That's a pretty eye-popping stat, man. The one home out of 3,700 being in the market for 60 days. That is high demand. I got a question here that I think you're going to really enjoy. Kevin McCarthy asks, how do you get paid? i.e., how does your company make money? No disrespect, but everybody needs to get paid. Gregg, you're doing all this stuff. You're offering all these upgrades. It's for the benefit of the client, whatever, right? Where does JWB make its money? Why don't you talk to us?
Yeah, we make our money in two places. So the first place is that we're going to sell you a house and we're going to be into it for less than market value. And we're going to sell it to you at market value. So our major income source is that spread right there between the amount, our cost basis into the home versus market value. And so that's the overall number one source of income for JWB. The other source of income is our property management side. So we make money through our property management monthly fees, which are 10% of the gross rents that we collect. We make money when we sign a new resident for you. That's called a tenant placement fee. And then we make money through lease renewals. Those are the three places that we make money on the property management side. And that's how we do it.
There you go. So it's what I've learned from y'all is the idea that it is in selling the homes that you make your money. Ergo, property management is a piece of it, but your property management is made to get people to buy more homes.
Exactly. That's a really good point. So most property management companies are incentivized to have short-term rental stays, short-term resident stays. And you see that because they sign one-year leases, because the vast majority of their income comes from tenant placement fees. And that's why they only sign one-year leases. That's the biggest reason why they only sign one-year leases. JWB is not built that way on the property management side. We knowingly give up a lot of tenant placement fees that we could earn if we only signed one-year leases. But we give that up so that you're going to have better returns on investment. We only sign 2 and 3 year leases. And we do that because we believe, and what's been proven is, if we do a great job hitting the return expectations by keeping our fees low on the management side, then you're going to come back to us and you're going to buy many homes over our very long working relationship. And you're going to tell your friends and family about us. And so we are absolutely incentivized to sell you homes, and we're incentivized to keep your management fees low so that your returns will be good long-term.
Yeah, man. Telling your friends and family is the perfect example. When I tell my dad, I'm like, hey, man, their property management is it's not a loss leader, but it's not really where they're making the most money because they sell more homes. Like, yeah, it has to, but my dad's like, they have to be making money. It can't be a loss leader. I'm like, it's not a loss leader. They make money on it, but it's not the driver of their business. It is the idea that you get repeat customers, and every client that buys one home ends up averaging about 3 homes, right?
Yeah. Let's not say that it's a loss leader. It's not a loss leader.
Yeah.
I don't think that you guys would want it to be a loss leader. If we were at 3,700 homes and we were losing money on the property management side, that's hard to do. At one point, it was a loss leader though, when we were managing 300 homes, right? In the beginning, as a property management company, you actually do lose money coming out of the gates until you get to significant volume. So that's full transparency there.
All right, man. Good stuff. Gregg, do you have a couple extra minutes beyond the 1:30 mark?
Sure, buddy.
All right, let's get into it then. I'm gonna, you know what? There was a question in the chat that I don't want to miss because I think it's a pretty good question. It is, here we go. Got it. Timothy Bates asks, I've been approached by various lenders to consolidate all of my individual mortgages into one loan. What are your thoughts on that, and what's the downside?
It's kind of, I'd really want to fully understand what they're offering to you. It's not very common. I see that potentially being possible with maybe small banks that have a personal relationship with you, that want to hold their own paper, that they want to basically, they haven't sold those loans and they want to basically consolidate it. So it's usually, those opportunities are really few and far between. They're very relationship based. If you have one of those opportunities, it could be a really great thing in your favor. If interest rates are the same, you don't have to change it from the personal name and, from a company to a personal name or whatever. It could be a good thing for you, but many times it just doesn't work that way. So I'd say explore it, see if it can work. It would be nice because you would have one loan on your credit instead of 4 loans or however many you had. But I would do my due diligence on it, because many times people want to go down this route. They explore it and then they find out that it's not really as good as it seems, and there's a whole lot of limitations with it. Got it.
Margaret Smith has another great question. I'm going to pop open the property again here. She asks, what is your policy regarding landscaping? This one has a huge tree stump. Would that disappear with the finishing of the rehab? Would a tree or two be planted for future increase of property value? My rule of thumb from old realtor site is that the same property side by side, one has shade trees, one is barren, different sale price by 15%. And she knows that she personally loves a bit of shade and some nice green. So if you can comment on that, Gregg.
Well, I think I'm going to disappoint you on this one, knowing that you have that experience and knowing that you love shade and nice landscaping. We're certainly not going to impress you with how this looks as from a landscaping perspective, right? Everything that we are built to do is to produce a return on investment for you. And if we saw that removing a large stump like that or planting a tree would produce more rent for you or a higher sale price in 20 years, then we would entertain that thought, but we just don't see that. And so we don't make those investments on your behalf. And as you're owning the property with us for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and there's some question as to whether or not you should make this investment in landscaping or in trees, we're going to analyze it that same exact way. Is this going to drive more returns for you? Is this going to limit your costs in the future? Is it worthwhile to make that investment? So we don't see that on the landscaping. We're going to do a minimum kind of standard landscaping is going to look okay in the front. It's probably going to look okay in the back. It's going to have enough curb appeal that somebody is not going to be wowed by the landscaping, but nobody's going to look at it and say, well, this is terrible right up front. I mean, that's really the standard that we're going to be able to get your home to rent very quickly. So sorry to disappoint, but that is the best risk-adjusted return way to look at it for rental properties in the neighborhoods that we serve to produce the best risk-adjusted returns for you.
There you go. I mean, I feel like when my wife met me, she was probably like, "Yeah, he looks okay in the front and the back, but he gets great ROI." So she bought in, right? Greg, the other thing I hear in that question is the idea that Margaret was talking about, I like a little shade, right? You talk a lot about the idea of don't look at these houses as a place that you're going to live. Look at it as an asset that creates cash flow, because that's what it is. It's not comparing whether I would like to live here or not. It's comparing what does the tenant, what does the resident have in options at that price range that provide that same return versus the house down the street, right?
Absolutely. It's very important that you separate this investment from something that you would be doing for your own house. That is mission critical. And for those who have spoken with my team already, we probably had this conversation right on the first conversation and on the second conversation, because it's so critical. You know, these investments are designed for a purpose. That purpose is to produce a return on investment for you. It is not to be a potential place that you want to live later on, because we are going to fail miserably if we try to take on all of those objectives, right? It is hard enough for us to produce the best risk-adjusted return on investment over a 20-year period. And that's our singular focus. So much to the point that if you say, hey, listen, I really potentially might want to live in this house at some point, or this is how I feel, you know, I would want if I were living there, we're going to have that open and honest discussion right off the bat. And we're going to ask you, we're going to say, you know, are you comfortable separating yourself from this? And if you give us an honest answer that it's just not how you're wired, and we're going to say, thank you so much for sharing that with us, right? Let's talk about that I just don't think this is going to be a fit for you, because I think our goals are not completely aligned. It's that important for us.
That makes a lot of sense, man. What about the idea that having better landscaping might attract a higher quality tenant? Does that just go against the data, or are you not looking for is that a false belief? Like, is there any truth to that?
Just haven't seen a correlation with that. I mean, when we're looking at our average duration of resident stay is over 4 years, and the maximum rents that we've been able to achieve, and we think about every dollar that we put in on your behalf needing to earn a significant amount of return back, we just don't see the correlation between a super pretty yard and a higher quality resident. In fact, I won't go so far to say we see the opposite, but what residents are looking at when they're trying to rent a home that's $1,000 or $1,200 a month, right? You're looking for a really nice home that has low maintenance costs, right? Like, we have residents, and there might be a patch of dirt in the front yard that doesn't require, as much mowing of the lawn, or it might have mulch in multiple places in the yard. And they look at that and say, awesome, zero maintenance. I don't have to maintain that, right? Because it's their responsibility to maintain whatever you would put in there, So it's not all roses just to put a really nice amount of landscaping into a yard. You got to think about the ongoing maintenance that you're now saddling the resident with. And so it is not high on their priority list in our experience.
Makes a lot of sense, man. Nadeem Shah, esteemed community member here, asks, I know that JWB has 2 to 3 year leases when buying the property, but what in the case that a client is buying a property with a lease about to run out in 3 months? Does JWB compensate the buyer till JWB gets a tenant in the property signing to a 2 to 3 year lease?
It's pretty rare. It's really on a case-by-case basis. We're going to do what's right for you. Nadeem, I believe you're under contract right now with a few properties. So I'm sure that we're taking care of you in one way, shape, or form to make sure that you're set up for success. I mean, we care so much about showing up 1 year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, actually looking at the expected return on investment that we saw and what you actually have. It's called our client ROI report, and we produce it monthly. and send out to you, to every client, every single month, so you can see how we're doing. And so we're not going to sell a property to you that puts you in a position of weakness for showing up. So some ways that we do this is we have in the past on the property of the week talked about properties that have rent credits, right? If we see that this home is under rented, there's some extenuating circumstance, then we can put a rent credit on the property, which we have done. That's all fully disclosed to you ahead of time before the property would even be presented here or to you for purchase. We've done other things with maintenance credits, property turn credits, right? If there are things that come up and we're like, you know what, this doesn't meet the JWB standard right now, but there's a great resident in the home. We're not going to uproot that resident right now. We're going to give that rent credit on the back end. Those are all done with that same mentality in mind of how does this person show up 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road, and we're able to hit that number. So Nadeem, if you have a question about a specific property that you have under contract, just reach out to the portfolio manager that you have, and I'm sure we can talk through how you're really in a great spot to hit those returns.
Sounds good, man. Anonymous Atende asks, how long does it take to rehab a home after the investor buys it? How long to get it rented?
Great question. I'm glad I'm allowed to clarify on that. The home is rented prior to you purchasing it. So negative days. And the home is cash flow positive when you close on it the vast majority of the time. So much so that I feel really confident setting that expectation for you, that you should be cash flow positive, have a paying resident in there. You know, sometimes the resident has a deposit down and is scheduled to move in, you know, but it's built for you so that it's on a silver platter. You're able to make a decision on this asset, buy it, and when you close, it's cash flow positive from day one and renovated to the JWB standard.
All right. Hannah has a question. Welcome, Hannah. Do investors who have several properties put the rentals under LLC or personal name?
So that can be a personal decision. Let me start off by saying asset protection is always a great idea, but it's what are you willing to risk and to give up and to incur as expenses in order to get that asset protection is the question. You can go down the route of buying every property in an LLC from day one. The challenges you'll run into is that you won't get the most advantageous financing terms. You won't be eligible to buy the property with a conventional loan if it's in the name of an LLC. So most people don't do that. What you can do is buy it in your personal name, and then there's a way to actually move it into an LLC afterwards. That can be a common approach. That's a minority of our clients that actually do that though. But there's a way to do that if that's really important for you. What I have done, as you know, especially in the beginning, when my business partners and I bought about 40 rental properties from 2006 to 2007 or so, 2008. And those rental properties stayed in our personal names, even all the way up to where we got over 40. And the way that we made that decision, we were also concerned about asset protection, is just, you can get really great insurance. And insurance can protect you if you get sued. You have to have a great insurance teammate, which we do. So that can be a level of defense for you. And the other thing is that if you go into an LLC, you're going to have additional costs along the way. You're going to have a new tax return to file, so you have to pay your CPA to do that. You have to keep records. You have to separate a lot of what you're doing a little bit more just to keep the integrity of the LLC. You have to register the LLC with the state every single year. You have to have a registered agent, you know, so call it an additional, I don't know, $500, $1,000 a year of costs just to have it in an LLC. So, you know, wherever you land on your ability to take on maybe some additional risk, wherever you land on how you feel about insurance covering and mitigating that risk, and wherever you land on wanting max cash flow will probably determine how you want to do it. It can be done anyway.
There you go. So it depends. Sandesh Godka, welcome back, Sandesh. Good to see you back. Do you provide before or after pictures of the property if it's going to be a rehab?
We don't provide a whole lot of before pictures or after pictures. What we do is we make this available for a resident. And what we do is we have, you know, I think we take maybe 3 or 4, we have a photographer that goes out and maybe takes 3 or 4 pictures of the home, and we have a virtual tour that the resident can see. So all of those things are basically available for all of our clients. Of course, when the home is renovated, those properties are then photographed, and then they're made available largely for the resident. So I guess what I'm kind of clarifying is it's not a normal part of the process, like there's not going to be a before picture ahead of time of the property. After you close on it, it's not typical that we'll then send out after pictures for you. But upon request, if you want to see what a resident is seeing, all of our homes are available on our rental homes website, which is JWB Rental Homes. And any of that available, any of those available photos will be there for you, as well as a virtual tour. So upon request, we'll get it to you. It's just not a part of the normal process because pictures are the least most important thing when making this decision.
Makes sense. Anonymous Attendee asks again, do you have cost segregation studies?
So cost segregation is a really cool concept. What Anonymous is asking is there a way to get even more tax savings from this property? And what I've shared with you is that there's a typical standard. Well, I don't know if standard is the right word in the CPA field. I'm not a CPA. You should consult your CPA. I'm just giving you real world real estate investor experience here, but there's a certain amount of kind of standardized deductions you can get from depreciation over the long haul. And what Anonymous is asking is, can we get bigger deductions by segregating different elements of the house? And the answer to this, most of the time, it's not worth it on a single family rental property. It just usually isn't worth it. Usually those cost segregation studies might cost upwards of $10,000. And for the amount of tax savings you're going to get on this specific asset, you're probably not going to get more than $10,000 worth of value from that cost segregation study, is what we have found. We do cost segregation studies on bigger purchases. So like our commercial buildings that we have purchased recently in downtown Jacksonville, you better believe we're doing cost segregation studies on those, because those are multi-million-dollar purchases. And it makes sense because the tax savings that you get from that are going to justify a $10,000 or a $20,000 cost segregation study. So we just haven't found it to be worthwhile for the single family investment space.
All right, man, we got 3 more questions in the Q&A. Let's knock those out. I'm going to say that that's a limit, but if you put a new question in there, our team will get back to you. Margaret Smith asks, is your lease standard for each property, taking into consideration a few items such as septic versus sewers? For example, do you allow subleasing?
Our lease definitely takes into account whether the septic or sewer, and there are different expectations that are set, especially if you were on the call with us 2 weeks ago when we were rolling out our septic warranty program. There's a whole lot of documentation there in the lease if it's on a septic, if it's on a septic tank, to make sure that everybody is protected. The client, the septic warranty vendor is protected, as well as the resident. So yes, definitely. I can't remember the other question. What was the other question?
Like, do you allow
Do we allow subleasing? No, we don't allow subleasing.
There you go. There you go. You know, I have to say something, right? So Nadeem puts in the chat, Anonymous asks good questions. And like every time I say Anonymous Attendee and you smile, I'm always like, man, it never gets old. But then every time you say it, I smile. So I'm like, it doesn't get old. It's so good. For anybody that doesn't know, that's just, if you register and you don't put your name, it just shows up as Anonymous Attendee. So we have a good time with it. Bill Shields asks, what type of insurance would you get to protect you on rentals in your own name?
You know, it's a great conversation for the insurance teammate to have with you. Bill, I'm not an insurance expert, but I'm always one phone call away. And that's how we are. So Bill, I'd encourage you to reach out to the team. I know you've already had some discussions with the team. We'll introduce you to the Ritchie Insurance Group, who is our main insurance partner, and we'll get you right on the insurance side. Indeed.
Whitney Ritchie, the insurance ninja. Final question of the day. Lee Bishop, reigning MVP of the Not Your Average Investor Show community. And he is coming off of his COVID shot. That's why he wasn't here on Tuesday, let the record show. And now he's thinking about the future. And he asks, when is JWB going to get back to visiting the team at headquarters again so we can see our investments? Lee's asking, when can he come back and hang out, basically? When are we opening it back up again?
It's a good question. We're walking gingerly into that one, Lee. We want it to happen as soon as possible, but we're certainly not going to be the leader in coming back too early from COVID. So none of our policies have changed in the last, call it 3 months or so, 6 months. Right now, the office is still closed to visitors, unfortunately. And we are hoping that will change soon. As soon as it changes, I will let you know. I'm excited to see your bright and shiny face, Lee.
Yeah, Lee's going to go on a hugging spree as soon as it opens up. Now he's got that COVID vaccine. And for the record, Lee, I'm trying to get in there because I want to be at the studio that Gregg's got going on. I know,
man.
Like, I'm not even allowed there.
Pablo's seat is right across from me, and we can't make it happen yet. But in due time.
Soon enough, Greg, but we made it happen today. We had 47 people with us, the majority of the call. Some have dropped off. We're down to 38, but it never falls, mute upon us. The idea that 38 of you, 47 of you take an hour of your day in the middle of a Thursday, hang out with us, ask us questions, allow us to add value to your life. It's really just an absolute honor for me to share this seat across from the GC over here. And next Tuesday, we'd love for you to join us again. We have a bunch more value coming on. We're going to be talking about what's going to drive Jacksonville property values higher in the near future. It's one of our favorite topics. It's downtown Jacksonville with the CEO of the Downtown Investment Authority, Lori Boyer. I took a call with her a couple of weeks ago to talk about what's actually happening in downtown, from activating the waterfront for everybody to making this like really walkable area that's going to attract a great workforce, to her career that's been spectacular. Lori is just a fascinating person. So you're going to become an expert in what's happening in downtown and really understand how that's going to drive the economy here. That's going to make your investment even better. If you've already bought it, it's going to make you want to invest in Jacksonville for the future, like I have as well. It's going to be a really, really good time. And again, if you want to see today's property sheet by tomorrow, end of day tomorrow, it'll be at jwbinventory.com. That is where the repository of all of our POT dubs are going to be hanging out from henceforth. It's going to be a great place to watch Greg break it down, see all the resources and all that good stuff. Apart from that, this has been awesome, Greg. I love Thursdays. I'll leave it up to you to close this out.
I do too. Thursdays are amazing. You all make it extra special, and just super fired up to have Lori with us on the show on Tuesday. It is tough to get access to Lori Boyer. I mean, she is the CEO of the single greatest influential governing body of downtown Jacksonville when it comes to real estate, the Downtown Investment Authority. I mean, it is really, really difficult. And I'm super excited that we have a great relationship and that she's agreed to be on the show. We've been trying to get her on the show for almost a year now. And she's really, really a special person for Jacksonville. So I'm excited for her to be here and for you all to ask some really great questions. And the show is awesome. So appreciate all of you. I'll see you in the group. If you have any other questions, make sure you bring them there, and I'll catch you guys next Tuesday. See you, everybody.
Adios.